Hello, Shalom. I'm Rabbi Peter Stein of Temple B'rith Kodesh, and I'm pleased to share with you a few different ideas about Judaism's teachings and wisdom and values in terms of the environment and climate change and other crises of this moment. A lot of it really begins at the beginning in the biblical story of creation in the book of Genesis. We know from that story that it says in Genesis 2, humankind was created on earth to care for and to protect God's creation. That is our fundamental, foremost responsibility. In the Psalms, we read, "The earth is God's and the fullness thereof, the settled land and its inhabitants." We are here as stewards. We are here as caretakers. Elsewhere in the biblical text, we read, "The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine. You are strangers and sojourners with me." And in the book of Genesis again, in the story of the Garden of Eden, God placed the human in the Garden of Eden to serve and to guard, to till the land, to tend the land. That is our responsibility, this idea of stewardship and human beings as caretakers of God's creation. If we look a little bit further forward in Jewish teaching and Jewish tradition, we know that the early rabbis, the rabbis who wrote the Talmud, developed a principle of bal tashchit, do not destroy or do not waste. It asserts God's ownership over the land. There's a teaching there rooted in the book of Deuteronomy from the Torah. When you besiege a city, do not destroy, lo tashchit, any of its trees. You may eat of them, but do not cut them down. We have a responsibility to care for the earth, to see the earth as part of God's creation. The rabbis also wrote a set of teachings called the Midrash, and in those teachings there, they wrote this: "Don't destroy my world, for if you do, there will be nobody after you to make it right again." Don't destroy my world, for if you do, there will be nobody after you to make it right again. A reminder, even from these ancient texts, of the urgency, the crisis of the moment, that we have a responsibility to play. We have the ability to care for the world, and theologically, it's that idea that God created the world and put us in it as caretakers. And so the rabbis in the Midrash say, do not destroy my world, for there will be nobody after you to make it right again. It brings us to the poetic idea in the Psalms, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, reminding us again that we are here, creations of God, caring for God's creation of the earth. More broadly in Jewish teaching, there's the emphasis on the pursuit of justice. Famously in the book of Deuteronomy, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, justice, justice, you shall pursue. And that repeated word is there for emphasis. This is our foremost, most important obligation. And so this carries into the work we need to do in terms of caring for the environment and responding to crisis. One example, of course, is that we in the U.S. are under 5% of the world's population, yet we cause at least a quarter of all greenhouse gases. And who will rising sea levels and other effects of climate change harm most? Poor people in developing nations. So it's a matter of justice. It's a matter of our responsibility to care for those and help those and lift those up who need our support. Those who are vulnerable need our support. I turn one last time to the classic texts of our tradition and to the idea that Jewish values say we should be saving endangered species, that everything's part of the plan, yet global warming moves too fast for most of creation to adapt. It can threaten species, it can threaten whole ecosystems. So the Midrash, for example, says even those creatures you deem superfluous in the world, like flies, fleas, and gnats, nevertheless have their allotted task in the scheme of creation. Or Maimonides telling us it should not be believed that all beings exist for the sake of humanity's existence. Rather, all the other beings, too, have been intended for their own sakes. I close with the prayer from Deuteronomy. See, I have set before you this day life and death, blessing and curse. You shall choose life in order that you and your children may live. Judaism emphasizes and urges us to take action, to care for the environment, care for the earth, and ensure that future generations will live in health, in safety, and in peace.